everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of Story Stalking, a division of Dead to Rights, the podcast video for the crime genre industry. I'm your host, Donna Carrick, and today I'm delighted to bring you a really fun, whimsical, delightful story by Lynne Murphy titled Let the Sunshine In. It first appeared in the Key of 13 by the Mesdames of Mayhem, Carrick Publishing, 2019. If you're not familiar with Lynne's work, she writes, she's written a really high number of stories, so you can find her in so many anthologies and collections. And all of her stories have that touch of humor, and that they're crisp, they're sparkling, and they're just a lot of fun. So I hope you're going to really enjoy it. Before we get to it, I want to remind you all that A Grave Diagnosis, our 2020 Carrick Publishing crime anthology, will be coming out near the end of October 2020, and it features 35 stories of murder and malaise, including a really terrific story by this Lynne Murphy titled Woman Aglow. And I happen to just love that story. I was so pleased that she offered to contribute it for our anthology. It's a great story. I think it may be one of her best. It's quite diabolical. So now, please join me for this reading of Let the Sunshine In by Lynne Murphy. Let's try There's a Bluebird on Your Windowsill, Carol, the seniors' choir leader, announced in her relentlessly cheery voice. One or two members of the audience looked hopefully toward the windows, but only the February snow was swirling down outside. Join in if you know the words, Carol called out. Charlotte Manners sang along with the other altos about rainbows and happy thoughts, but her heart wasn't in it. Seniors' residences were always depressing, and Sunnyways Lodge was more depressing than most. The residents sat slumped in their wheelchairs, heads lolling, eyes vacant. A few of them mouthed the words, others tried to tap time with slippered feet. But in general, the choir might as well have been singing to an audience of zombies. Sunnyways was perfectly clean and nicely furnished, even though everything was beige. Charlotte recognized the usual odor you found in these places: disinfectant, air spray, and yesterday's meals. Underneath, there was the inevitable tang of ammonia. Charlotte was mindful that good genes and a little luck meant she was singing in the choir instead of slouched in a wheelchair in the audience. She could be thankful that, at the age of 80, her back was still straight, her memory was good, and she still had all her own teeth. She took a deep breath and tried to sing with more feeling. The song came to an end, and there was a little applause. We are going to take a break for the delicious tea Sunnyways has generously provided, Carol announced. Enjoy! Charlotte noticed that one of the residents was waving at her. She recognized the woman with the ridiculous name who had moved from Charlotte's condo building a few years earlier. Cookie Baker. But this was a much changed Cookie. Where was the woman Charlotte remembered with the ash blonde coiffure and the color-coordinated outfits? Now her hair was iron gray and needed washing, and she was wearing red track pants with a hideous orange paisley top. Charlotte walked across the room and bent over Cookie's wheelchair. Cookie, I didn't know you were here. I thought you were living with your son and his wife. Cookie clutched Charlotte's arm and grimaced. I broke some vertebrae, osteoporosis. I couldn't manage the stairs from the basement apartment. I've been here for, I don't know, I guess it's more than a year now. Charlotte, I need to talk to you, somewhere private. Cookie said this with such urgency that Charlotte couldn't refuse. Of course, she said. Where can we go? Your room? They might have it bugged, Cookie whispered. I guess if we turn on the TV. Oh dear, Charlotte thought. Cookie has lost it, and she used to be such a practical person. Perhaps it was best to humor her. You direct me, and I'll wheel you there, she said. I'll tell Maisie I'm going to have a look in your room, in case she wonders where I am. Maisie, the short one that's blind as a bat? That's Maisie, Charlotte said. She briefed Maisie, and then, following Cookie's directions, pushed the wheelchair out of the lounge and down the hall. Cookie's small room seemed even smaller because of the quantity of furniture: a queen-size bed, a large dresser, 2 easy chairs, a TV on a stand. There were large brass or china ornaments on every flat surface, mostly animal figures. There was scarcely room for the wheelchair and Charlotte. Sit down, Cookie gestured to one of the chairs. Hand me that remote first. Charlotte did as she was told, and Cookie pressed the button. The TV was tuned to a cooking show, and both women studied the screen for a moment. Then Cookie said, I think someone is killing the residents in this place. Charlotte was well aware of cases that had been in the news, murders in nursing homes by caregivers. But people were watching for that now, weren't they? Since I've been here, 5 people have died, and I know what you're going to say, that you expect deaths in a senior's home. But these were some of the more alert people, and they complained all the time. Troublemakers. Have you talked to anyone about this? I mentioned it to my son after Shirley died. She was the 3rd. He said I was imagining things. Truly, Charlotte, I think he just doesn't want to bother. I'm here, and that's that. What about the staff? Have you spoken to them? Cookie gave a wry little laugh. How would I know who to talk to? Maybe they're all in on it. Do you suspect anyone? There's this one nurse who comes in the evenings, Nurse Thrasher. I call her Nurse Ratchet. Like in that movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Yes, she's like a dictator. Charlotte could hear the choir starting up again. Tea time must be over. They were singing Open Up Your Heart and Let the Sunshine In. Charlotte disliked that song with its talk about the devil. And why couldn't they sing something more recent than the 50s, something by the Beatles or even Leonard Cohen? I have to go, Cookie, she said. Carol will be wondering where I am. Do you want me to wheel you back? Cookie shook her head. I'll just stay here. You aren't going to do anything, are you? Charlotte wished that someone from Golden Elder's condo had kept in touch with Cookie after she moved out. Maybe if they had, things would have been different. Loneliness can make a person start imagining things. I'll talk to the gals about it at coffee tomorrow morning, she said. They may have some ideas. Meanwhile, be careful not to be a troublemaker. She had meant it as a joke, but Cookie's face twisted and tears came into her eyes. Then she turned her wheelchair around so that Charlotte had to say goodbye to the back of her head. In the lounge, the choir was singing, Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella. Charlotte slipped into her place and sang along, thankful that it was the last song in their repertoire. Driving Maisie home, she explained what had happened. If I remember Cookie right, she was very down to earth, Maisie said. Not the kind of person to make things up. In fact, she was pretty boring. I know, and today she seemed really frightening. It was upsetting to see her like that. After coffee the next morning, Charlotte asked Bessie, Olive, and Maisie to stay behind for a few minutes. She repeated Cookie's story, and to her surprise, Olive reacted as soon as she heard the name Sunny Ways. I know that place, she said. Dawn's cousin Harry was there for a while. I visited him once, and there was something creepy about it. It had bad vibes. Is he still alive? Charlotte asked nervously. Oh, yes. It was just temporary, till the family could get him into a place closer to them. He was really jumpy, looking around every few minutes to see if someone was watching us. I was glad to get out of there. I think we should look into it, Bessie said. She was a big woman and used to taking charge. You'd feel terrible if something happened to Cookie and you hadn't done anything. She's stuck in a wheelchair. She's vulnerable. Charlotte wished she had never gone to Sunny Ways with the choir, never responded to Cookie's wave, and never brought the story to the coffee club. If anyone has any suggestions, she said. There was a pause while everyone looked at everyone else. Then Bessie said, respite care. Who do we know who could book in for respite care? The ladies turned to Charlotte. Oh, no, she said. There isn't anything wrong with me. I couldn't tell lies to get in. I remember now, Olive said suddenly. There was this one nurse Harry hated. She was a real bully. He said she was like a nurse in a horror show. Charlotte, isn't that what Cookie said? Maisie interjected. You told me that yesterday. Charlotte tried to ignore her. You had those back spasms, Charlotte, Olive said. Last year, they never found anything on the x-rays, but you couldn't walk properly for days. Remember you had to borrow a walker? My daughter came every day to help me. She would do it again. Bessie banged her fist on the table. Aren't Joanne and her husband going to Costa Rica in March? You told us about it at bridge last week. You wouldn't want your bad back to ruin her holiday. But my back is just fine. Charlotte, Bessie said, show a little creativity. Think of all those poor old people lying there helpless. Bessie was 93, but she didn't consider that old. Charlotte felt helpless herself. Here were her presumed friends, willing to send her into a situation which could be dangerous, possibly life-threatening. Just as she was about to give a definite no, Maisie spoke up. I'll do it, she said. I wouldn't be as useful as you, Charlotte, with my poor eyesight and everything, but it'll be easy for me to fake needing respite care. The other women looked at Maisie with admiration and then turned to Charlotte. She knew when she was beaten. Oh, all right, I'll do it, but you all have to help with the planning. I'm not good at making things up. Atta girl, we need to set up a spreadsheet, Olive said. She was the condo's resident computer geek, an unlikely one with her sensible shoes, tightly permed hair, and pastel polyester pantsuits. When does your daughter leave for Costa Rica? The beginning of March. That doesn't give us much time, Bessie said. You and I have to go see Cookie this afternoon, Charlotte, and find out everything she knows. In the meantime, Olive, think about people who can help us get Charlotte in there while her daughter is away. There may be a waiting list. Bessie was a lifelong worker for the Conservative Party, and Olive's husband had once sat in the provincial legislature as a Liberal. They were also pillars of their respective churches, Olive, the Roman Catholics, and Bessie, the Anglicans. Between them, they knew a great number of influential people. I can drive us to Sunny Ways if you want, Bessie said to Charlotte as they were gathering their things. I'll drive, thanks. I was there just yesterday, so I know the best route. Charlotte had vowed never again to let Bessie drive her anywhere after a very bad experience. She still remembered the truck driver's astonished and angry face. I'll meet you downstairs at 1:30, and Bessie strode off, as well as one can stride while pushing a walker. At Sunny Ways, Cookie thanked them again and again for coming. It was almost embarrassing. The three women crowded into her room, which seemed even smaller, with the addition of Betsy and her walker. We're making a plan, Bessie said, after they had shed their coats and found seats. Charlotte had to sit on the bed. Charlotte is going to apply for respite care here while her daughter is away in Costa Rica. She's going to have a bad back when the time comes. That's a great idea, Charlotte. Bessie said, we need to know about the staff. This nurse you mentioned to begin with. Charlotte, you'd better take notes. She pulled a sheet of paper from the capacious knitting bag, which she always carried, and handed it to Charlotte. Cookie described Nurse Thrasher. She works in the overnight shift several times a week, and she likes to be on alone, which is suspicious, don't you think? And she's a registered nurse, so she's the one who handles the medications, needles and things. Anyone could use a pillow to smother people, Bessie said. Cookie looked stunned at the thought and then carried on. Everyone's afraid of her, even the other nurses. Charlotte shivered. She wasn't good at confrontation. How was she going to help if this woman came after Cookie in the night? There's Flora, who's from the Philippines. She's a PSW, a personal support worker. Works days mostly. A nice little thing, always sending money home to her family. And there's Patrick. He's an RN. He sometimes does the overnight shift. He's very good to his mother. Talks about her a lot. Then there's Linda, another PSW, and the day nurses, Latoya and Rhonda. Bessie said, "Stop. That's enough to start with. We have to leave soon. Now, Cookie, you need to start complaining. You told Charlotte it was the whiners who were being targeted, didn't you? Complain about something every day." "Isn't that dangerous?" Charlotte asked. "Suppose it's someone with a short temper, and they go after Cookie before I get here." "Just little things at first," Bessie said, "so she gets a reputation." "I can do that, God knows there's enough to complain about," Cookie said with feeling. "I think I'll send back my soup at dinner. It's always lukewarm." Charlotte wasn't sure they had done the right thing by unleashing Cookie's troublemaking side, but it was too late now. She and Bessie donned their coats and boots and said their goodbyes. Bessie's last comment to Cookie as she saw them off at the front door was, "And for heaven's sakes, do something about your hair, Cookie." "Well, that was a good start," Bessie said, as Charlotte helped her into the car and heaved the walker into the back seat. "I wonder what Olive organized while we were away." "Do you think Cookie has the right idea? How is annoying the cooks going to help? They aren't likely to be killing people." "Cooks are in the perfect position to poison people," Bessie said grimly. Charlotte wanted to ask how they could be sure of killing just one person, but she knew Bessie would have an answer for that. She started the car and they drove home in silence. 3 weeks later, Charlotte found herself in a temporary room at Sunnyways Lodge, wondering why she had given in to this crazy plan. Every night of those 3 weeks she had gone to bed with a feeling of dread, and every morning she had wakened to the same feeling. But every day, Cookie had phoned her to report that she had filed a new complaint and she was still alive, which was something to be thankful for. Charlotte looked around the room. It was the same size as Cookie's, but it wasn't as full of furniture. She had only one armchair and there was no TV. Hers was too big to bring with her. At least she hadn't had to lie to her doctor, who was an old friend. Well, only a little fib. She had explained that her daughter and son-in-law were going on a holiday, and they would feel better if she was in respite care while they were away. Dr. Stevens had signed the papers without any questions, and Bessie and Olive had worked their magic with the admitting process. Later today, she would phone her grandson, Justin, and ask him to tell his parents in Costa Rica where she was. He was at university out of town, so he wouldn't be coming to visit. There was a knock at the door. Charlotte stood up, then remembered it was supposed to be painful for her to walk, and she had to save her energy. She called, "Come in." It was Cookie. "I'm so glad you got here, Charlotte. I've come to take you down to the lounge for the sing-along before dinner." Cookie seemed to have gained a new lease on life in the past 3 weeks. Her hair had been decently cut, and she was wearing a matching top and pants. And she was using a walker instead of a wheelchair. I hope you don't mind. I told Keisha, the social director, that you can play the piano. We have a sing-along before dinner on Saturdays, and Jenny, our usual pianist, broke her femur yesterday and is in the hospital. It won't bother your back playing piano, will it? Before Charlotte could say that Cookie knew full well there was nothing wrong with her back, the door was flung open and a wild-haired woman appeared. She pointed at Charlotte and said menacingly, "You're on the list." Then she retreated and slammed the door. "Who was that?" Charlotte asked when she got her breath back. "Oh, we call her the Slammer. We're all used to her, though Paul Sikorsky found it very frightening at first. He used to live in Russia." "I hope she doesn't do that in the middle of the night." "I think they sedate her," Cookie said. "But lock your door just in case. Ready to go?" In the lounge, Charlotte was introduced to Keisha, a plump little thing with dreadlocks who looked all of 16. She was almost tearfully grateful to have a pianist appear in front of her. "We're so glad to see you, Charlotte. Aren't we, everyone? Let's all say welcome to Sunny Ways, Charlotte." The small group gathered around the piano didn't seem terribly enthusiastic, but one or two responded. "We usually sing for half an hour or so, don't we, Cookie? The residents prefer the old favorites. There are music books on the piano. I hope you sight read, or if you play by ear, that's fine. Anything is fine. What would you like to sing, ladies and gentlemen?" Charlotte slid onto the piano bench and looked at her audience. There were murmurs of, "Where's Jenny?" but no suggestions. Finally, Cookie piped up, "How about when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along?" Charlotte played that, and then one old standard after another. Keisha had a good, strong voice, and she carried the others. Finally, she announced that it was time for dinner. "And isn't it lovely that Charlotte can come and play for us while she's here?" "Where's Jenny?" someone asked. "Did Jenny die too?" Keisha ignored the speaker and called for a round of applause for Charlotte. There were a few hand claps, and then the wheelchair and walker parade formed up and headed for the dining room. "Come on, Charlotte," Cookie said. "I asked for you to be at my table, and the Dougs will already be there." "The Dougs?" "There are two men at my table, and they're both called Doug. Tall Doug and Little Doug. The little guy is a lot of fun." Tall Doug was tall, abnormally thin, and very quiet. Little Doug was tiny, bald, and had traces of an English accent. He was one of those people who loved to dwell on disasters, not Charlotte's idea of fun. He had a high, piping voice that got on her nerves after just a few minutes. First, he wanted to talk about Jenny, the missing pianist. "Terrible thing, Jenny breaking her femur like that. They'll likely have to take the leg off now. You know she's had 3 hip replacements. Well, she should never have been line dancing." "She was line dancing," Charlotte said. Sunny Ways was not as quiet a place as she had thought. "Yesterday evening. Gina Mutzi started it after the movie. What was the movie called, Cookie?" "Saturday Night Fever. Jenny loves dancing." Little Doug went on to review the recent deaths. Shirley, who hadn't really needed to be here, and did she ever let everyone know it? Jane, who had all her marbles and could still play a mean game of bridge. Lou, a good guy but cranky. Mabel, not the friendliest of people, but she was all right if you didn't get on her bad side. And Rose, who hadn't used a cane, let alone a walker. And there you were. At some point during this speech, Tall Doug stood up, nodded to everyone, and left the table. "They'd all still be with us if they'd had proper care," Little Doug said. "Dying in their beds like that. They should have used their alert bracelets to get help. I've got mine on now." I have one too, Cookie said. You should get one, Charlotte. It's a comfort in the night if you can't get to your phone. I'll certainly think about it, Charlotte said. Someone should have suggested it before she got here. Suppose the killer, if there was a killer, caught on to her act and came into her room in the night. She felt in her pocket for her cell phone. It would have to do. Little Doug left the table, promising to see them at breakfast. Charlotte didn't look forward to that meal. The food at dinner had been just short of disgusting. Lukewarm soup, glutinous beef stew, lumpy mashed potatoes, and overcooked gray-green beans. And little Doug's voice had given her a headache. She declined Cookie's suggestion that they play bingo or watch the hockey game on TV in the lounge. She said she wanted an early night, even though it was barely 7 o'clock. On her way to her room, she was accosted by a tall, handsome woman in nursing whites. Mrs. Manners, the woman said, I want to have a word with you before you turn in. I am Nurse Thrasher. I was busy with another resident when you arrived, so I didn't see you then. I understand that you plan to look after your own medication while you're here. She sounded surprised, as if Charlotte didn't look capable of tying her shoes, let alone administering her own pills. Charlotte wished she hadn't been pushing a walker. She felt at a disadvantage. Yes, I do. Is that a problem? It's much safer if you turn them over to us at the nursing office, and we see to it. Pills can sometimes go missing from the residents' rooms. I only take the one prescribed pill for my blood pressure. I can handle it myself. I was a registered nurse. Nurse Thrasher ignored that. What about the medication for your back pain? Charlotte had forgotten her bad back. My doctor said to take them only as needed. I have to have them with me in case the spasms come in the middle of the night. Very well, Nurse Thrasher said, but you must keep them locked in the locked box that is in your room. She just missed adding, or else. Charlotte was glad to get away from her and let herself into her room. After leaving a message on her grandson's phone and a message for Bessie, thank God for voicemail, she locked the door, remembering the slammer, and crawled into bed. It took her some time to get to sleep, and she woke with a start, not much later. A figure with a flashlight was moving quietly toward her bed. Charlotte froze. Where was she? Then she remembered. She felt under her pillow for her cell phone and turned it on. Stop, she shouted to the intruder. I'm calling 911. Mrs. Manners, it's me, Flora. I'm just checking to see you're okay. Charlotte sat up and turned on her bedside light. She recognized Flora, the care worker who had admitted her the afternoon before. Oh, I'm so sorry, Flora said. I didn't mean to wake you up. I knock, but no answer. You don't call me to help you get ready for bed, so we wonder if you're all right. Miss Thrasher asked me to check on you. As if the mention of her name had conjured her up, Nurse Thrasher appeared in the doorway. What is all this disturbance? She asked. I heard shouting. Charlotte and Flora both quailed. Charlotte spoke first. I'm so sorry, nurse. Flora came in to check on me, and I woke up and didn't know where I was. I do apologize for the shouting. I hope there won't be any more of this, Mrs. Manners. It is very disturbing for the other residents. Flora, you can go back to doing the bed checks. So sorry, Flora said, retreating. Nurse Thrasher sniffed loudly and went out. Charlotte heard the door lock from the outside. Of course, she realized. The staff had passkeys to all the rooms. Any of them could get in, and now she was branded a troublemaker. Her first night here. She wanted to take a sleeping pill, but it seemed unwise to fall into a deep sleep. The rest of the night was uncomfortable. She woke early, got up, and dressed. Breakfast was served at 8 a.m. on Sundays, she knew. A few minutes before 8 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. She called, "Come in," then remembered the door was locked. While she was fighting with the brake mechanism on her walker, the door opened, and a young blonde man in a blue nursing smock walked in. "Mrs. Manners," he said, "or is it okay if I call you Charlotte? I'm Patrick, the nurse on duty. Welcome to Sunny Ways. By the way, I'm afraid I have some rather unpleasant news." Oh no, Charlotte thought, not a death the first night I'm here. Before she could speak, Patrick went on. "There was an outbreak of tummy trouble in the night. That's why I'm still on shift. We've been terribly busy." "Oh dear, that's too bad." "Anyway, since you're new here, I thought you should know about the outbreak procedure. Your visitors are restricted to family members, and they must come straight to your room. Meals are being served in the dining room, but please clean your hands at the disinfectant stations before and after meals. And if you feel any nausea or have any other symptoms, report them to the nursing office and stay in your room. I have a printout here that outlines the rules." He walked over to hand it to her. Up close, she realized that he was older than she had thought. She was almost sure his hair was dyed. "Sorry to dump all this on you your first morning here." "Thank you, Patrick," Charlotte said. "I trust no one is badly ill." "These outbreaks can go through a senior's residence like wildfire," he said. "I hope I don't carry it home to my mother. She's pretty frail." "You take care of your mother? That's good of you." "Oh, mother appreciates it, and she never complains. Not like some of the people here." He stopped himself. "I shouldn't have said that. I'm just tired after last night." At that point, his phone rang. Patrick took it out of the pocket of his smock, looked at it, and sighed. "It's Mother. She's worried because I'm not home yet. Well, better get on with things. Have a nice day." And off he went to spread the news of the outbreak. Charlotte's first reaction was panic. Bessie had promised that she would come by after church to check the place out and help Charlotte make plans. Now she was going to be on her own with no one but Cookie for moral support, and she didn't have much faith in Cookie. There was another tap on the door and Cookie appeared. "Yoo-hoo, I've come to walk you down to breakfast." "Cookie, have you heard about the sickness going around?" "Yes, I got one of the notices under my door. Don't worry, it happens all the time. Lockdown, I call it. Come on, pancakes or waffles this morning." Little Doug was at the table when they arrived, but Tall Doug was missing. Charlotte hoped it wasn't the stomach virus keeping him away. Cookie and Little Doug spent the meal speculating on who was down with the bug and whether the lockdown would come into full force this outbreak. Then meals would have to be served in rooms. Charlotte listened with increasing gloom as she tried to eat the leaden pancakes. After breakfast, she headed back to her room to phone Bessie and tell her about the outbreak. Bessie was briefly daunted by the news of the stomach virus, but only briefly. "You can keep us informed by phone, Charlotte. You'll be just fine. Call me back after you've had a good look around." Charlotte started off to check the place out. Everything took so much longer when you were pushing a walker. Finally, across from the nursing station in the main hallway, she found a small alcove with an armchair where she could sit and observe everyone coming and going without being too obvious herself. She could also see Cookie's door from that spot. There was a large artificial chefflera that would partially mask anyone sitting in the chair. This would be her post. She could sneak down at night when everyone else was in bed and keep an eye on things. She would have a nap during the day so she could stay awake. If anyone found her in the chair, she would say that her back hurt so much she couldn't sleep, and she had been taking a walk to keep her mind off it. Now that she had a plan, she felt much better. Back in her room, she tried to read, but couldn't concentrate. The only break in the boredom was listening to the slammer going up and down the hall, occasionally finding an unlocked door. It was a relief when lunchtime came. Tall Doug was still missing from the table. Little Doug announced that he was down and that things didn't look good. "These tall, thin guys don't have much resistance," he said. When Charlotte got back to her room, she was startled to find Flora there. "Just making the bed," Flora said, and she left quickly. But hadn't the bed already been made when Charlotte went to lunch? Cookie had mentioned Flora sending money home to her family. Might she be getting some money from the residence rooms? Charlotte decided to take a nap, suspecting everyone was making her unusually tired, and the atmosphere of sunny ways was sapping her energy. When she woke, she went to the lounge where many of the residents were sitting, looking drearily at the snow-covered windows. Charlotte asked Linda, the attendant on duty, if it was all right if she played the piano. Her own piano had gone to her grandchildren when she moved into the condo. Playing for the sing-along had made her realize how much she missed making music. She played hymns because it was Sunday, the hymns of her childhood, and she was touched to hear some of the residents joining in. "Shall we gather at the river? Amazing Grace and Blessed Assurance." When Cookie called her to dinner, she felt a little better. There were more residents missing at dinner, but not little Doug, unfortunately. He sounded delighted as he added names to the roster of those who were down. Cookie was just as bad as him, reminding him of those he hadn't mentioned. Charlotte felt as though she had entered a war zone. Would she ever get out of this place? Dinner was a choice of fish fillets or salad plate, and smelling the fish, Charlotte opted for the salad. After dinner, she fled back to her room. She was beginning to realize why she hadn't kept in touch with Cookie when she moved from the condo. They had almost nothing in common. Cookie liked bingo, for heaven's sake, and she had to spend 2 more weeks here, unless Cookie was attacked very soon. She was horrified to find that the idea was not unwelcome. She read for a while, then undressed for bed and set her alarm for 12 o'clock. The night nurse came on at 11 p.m., and by midnight, things might be quiet enough for her to venture out to her observation post. When the alarm went off, she was sleeping soundly. It took all her willpower to get up, put on her robe, and make her way out the door, after looking down the hall in both directions. She left her walker behind. It was just an encumbrance. She made herself comfortable in the little alcove, pulled the plant in front of her, and hunkered down. Nurse Thrasher and Patrick were in the nurse's office. Every so often, one of them came out and headed down the hall, apparently in answer to a summons. They would come back after an interval and then head out again. There must be a large number of patients needing help. Patrick seemed to be taking frequent phone calls when he was in the hall, away from Nurse Thrasher. Charlotte struggled to stay awake, but after a while she dozed off. The next thing she heard was a group of workers arriving, chattering in a foreign language. The kitchen staff, she assumed. Some security guard I am, she thought, as she eased her cramped body out of the chair and shuffled back to her room, hoping no one was watching. If she spent many more nights like this, she was genuinely going to have a bad back. Monday was a dreadful repetition of Sunday, brightened only by a phone call from her grandson and several sessions at the piano in the lounge. During the sing-along, she noticed that one couple was jiving quite nimbly when she played "On the Sunny Side of the Street," and that cheered her up a little. At dinner, little Doug announced that Keisha, the social director, had caught the bug. "Young people are likely to succumb to these plagues," he said, "like with the Spanish flu," clearly relishing the prospect. All activities had been canceled anyway because of the outbreak. The food continued to be almost inedible. After dinner, Charlotte napped. Once again, her alarm woke her at midnight, and she crept down the hall to her hiding place. She saw Nurse Thrasher seated at her desk in the lighted nursing office. She was alone. Suddenly the woman lifted her head and seemed to stare right at Charlotte. She came out of the office and walked to the alcove. Someone moved that plant, she was saying. She bent down to slide the chefflera into place and jumped back on seeing Charlotte. Mrs. Manners, she said, what are you doing up at this hour? Charlotte pretended to have suddenly wakened from sleep. Where am I? She said. You're out of your room in the middle of the night. That is against the rules. It was lucky Charlotte was prepared for this. My back hurts, she said. Sometimes it helps to walk it off, so I was doing that. I sat down and must have dozed off. Nurse Thrasher frowned. I'll help you back to your room, she said. It isn't good for someone with a bad back to sleep in a chair, and the halls are cool at night. We have enough problems with the outbreak without someone here for respite care getting pneumonia. I'm sorry, Charlotte said, and she truly was. Now there was another black mark against her. On their way to Charlotte's room, they met Patrick, who must have been dealing with another sick resident. Charlotte, he said, do you need help? Nurse Thrasher was quick to explain. I found Mrs. Manners sleeping in a chair in the lobby. She made it sound as if it were equivalent to dancing naked. Could you take her back to her room, Patrick? I was in the midst of some important paperwork when I discovered her there. Let us have no more of this wandering, Mrs. Manners. Patrick took Charlotte's arm. Not using your walker, Charlotte. Isn't that a bit dangerous? He would notice. I must have been half asleep when I left my room, Charlotte said. I took some pain pills earlier. My head is a bit fuzzy. When they reached her room, he unlocked the door and shepherded her in. I'll help you into bed. Would you like a sleeping pill? Mother always takes one when she feels wakeful. No, thank you, Patrick. My pain pills should be enough. Please lock the door behind you. Although much good that would do with the staff able to enter at will. As Patrick went out, his phone rang again, and she heard him say, Yes, Mother, I'm still here. Charlotte slept late the next morning and missed breakfast. Cookie came knocking at her door to see if she was ill and brought her a banana, which was very welcome. When Charlotte was dressed, she phoned Bessie to report. I don't think I'm doing any good at all here, Bessie. Couldn't I come home? I'll say my back feels a lot better, and it's silly for me to be taking up a room here. But this is the perfect time to do away with someone when they're already weak with the flu. And if you come home, Bessie reasoned, you might bring the sickness with you. Charlotte had never thought of that. All right, she said, I'll stay a little longer. It was another tedious day. Then, in the late afternoon, Cookie phoned to report that she was feeling queasy and had been told to stay in her room. Charlotte played for the sing-along crowd and then went in to dinner alone with little Doug. He was almost gleeful at the news that Cookie was down. Charlotte knew she couldn't go back to the alcove that night if Nurse Thrasher was on duty, but Cookie needed protection. If Charlotte got into her room and just sat there, surely she wouldn't pick up the bug. She wouldn't touch anything. Night came and Charlotte put on her robe and started down the hall to Cookie's room, and was stopped by Patrick, who must have seen her from the nursing station. Charlotte, he said, where are you going? Where's Nurse Thrasher? Alas, she has succumbed to the stomach bug. She's lying down in one of the empty rooms. Are you having trouble sleeping again? Where is your walker? Damn and blast, he'd caught her again. My back is so much better after a good day rest. I don't feel I need it. I was just going to check on my friend, Cookie. I heard she has the bug. He took her firmly and walked her in the direction of her own room. You mustn't have any contact with Cookie. You might pick up the virus. Anyway, she was sleeping soundly when I last checked on her. But I'm worried about her, Charlotte said as they entered the room. Patrick closed the door behind them. She's lucky to have such a good friend. She's not very, well, popular here. Now let's get you back to bed, and I'm going to give you a sleeping pill. Miss Thrasher suggested that. We thought you might be suffering from what we call sundowning. Charlotte found the term ominous. Sundowning? Yes, sometimes seniors feel more active at nights and take to wandering. He took a plastic wrapped pill from the pocket of his smock and handed it to her. Take this right now. I see a glass of water by your bed. She didn't want to take anything Nurse Thrasher had suggested, nor did she trust Patrick. Maybe they were in on this together, but it was best to seem compliant. She got into bed, accepted the pill, and pretended to swallow it. As soon as he had left, she spat it out and hoped it had been just a sleeping pill and not something more lethal. She hid it under her pillow in case she needed to have it analyzed later. Then she got out of bed and opened her door, just a crack. She positioned her walker so that she could sit on it and see down the hall. It seemed like hours went by before she saw Patrick moving down the hall. Something glinted in his right hand. She opened her door wider and looked out. He was going into Cookie's room. Quickly, she slipped out into the hall and followed him. When she reached the half-open door, he was bending over Cookie. In the light from the hall, she could see he was holding a syringe. She heard him say, "Die, Mother. Why won't you die?" Charlotte picked up one of Cookie's large brass ornaments, a giant peacock, and struck Patrick over the head. He dropped to his knees. Cookie sat up in bed and screamed. Patrick tried to get up and Charlotte hit him again. This time he fell on his face and lay still. "My God, Charlotte," Cookie said, "what are you doing?" "I'm calling 911, Charlotte said. She took a tissue from the bosom of her nightdress and picked up the syringe off the floor. "I just hope this contains something lethal and isn't a shot to control the stomach flu." The next afternoon, Charlotte sat in her own living room, telling her story while Bessie, Olive, and Maisie listened, awestruck. She'd had some difficulty explaining things to the police when they arrived. Later, they had found that the syringe contained insulin, and Cookie was not a diabetic. Now that the sun was actually shining and she was back in her own home, she felt human again. Cookie had called frequently with the latest news and rumors. She, Cookie, didn't have the stomach bug, just a bit of gas. Patrick hadn't been severely injured, and he had confessed to being responsible for the recent deaths at Sunny Ways. Police were looking into other deaths at nursing homes where he had worked. Patrick's mother had been taken into care, as there was no one to look after her. Nurse Thrasher had collapsed when she heard of Patrick's crimes and kept saying, "But he was an RN." She was on sick leave and might not be returning to Sunny Ways. Tall Doug was back for meals, though Little Doug was now down with the bug. "You must be proud of yourself, Charlotte. Your name will be in all the papers," Bessie said, somewhat enviously. "I hope not. Since Patrick has confessed, there shouldn't have to be a trial. You know, it's funny. I thought I'd never want to see Sunny Ways again. Now that stay there did something for me. I found out how much I miss playing my piano. I'm going to get my grandson to find me a keyboard, and when this outbreak is over, I'm going to volunteer at Sunny Ways, go in once a week and play the piano for sing-alongs, if they'll have me." A month later, with the outbreak over, Charlotte was back in the lounge at Sunny Ways, seated at the piano. Quite a crowd had gathered. Cookie and Tall Doug were there holding hands. Charlotte opened up her songbook and launched into a tune from Hair. Everyone started singing, "Let the Sunshine In." The end. And that has been Let the Sunshine In, a wonderful story by Lynne Murphy that first appeared in the Key of 13 by the Mesdames and Messieurs of Mayhem, Carrick Publishing, and don't forget, Lynne Murphy's story, Woman Aglow, will appear in A Grave Diagnosis, Carrick Publishing's crime anthology for 2020. And we're really looking forward to that release in approximately late October. We'll let you know for sure when it's available. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you spending your time with us on Story Stalking. Hope you love all the great stories by all the wonderful authors. In addition, we thank Lynne Murphy for the wonderful story and Ted Carrick for the theme music, Eyes of Gold. See you all next week.
Dusty road, a man alone. His vital signs go on hold, and I don't know what you've been told, but the years have turned my eyes gold. And I told you what you told me, we'd never be in the same boat for free. Yet it rides, let it ride.